Hey, everybody, this is Todd from tennisfitnesstips.com. Today I got Jeff Salzenstein on the phone. He's going to be discussing tips that can help your forehand that maybe your local coach tends to get to teach you some out-of-the-box types of tips. Jeff, man, I appreciate you being on the call today.
Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me, and really looking forward to chatting with you today about tennis and the forehand and anything else that comes up.
Yeah, well, before we jump right into tips and stuff, I've looked through your course, and it's crazy good. But give us a little bit about your background.
Sure.
How you became a pro and then transitioned back from a pro to a coach and all that good stuff.
Yeah, sure. I'll gloss over real quickly. I was a national junior champion. I went on, played at Stanford, was a two-time All-American, won two-team national titles with Paul Goldstein and some other great players. Then went out on the tour, played for 11 years, and broke the top 100 for the first time at the age of 30. So it was one of those who got better with age instead of getting worse with age. I can really relate to the rec player out there who is wanting to get better at a later stage in their tennis career. I actually studied the game of tennis and studied what worked and what didn't work on myself, essentially, and just kept improving. And you see guys like Marty Fish, who's 29 years old. He's set in the world now. He's playing the best tennis because of his commitment to his game and his fitness and all that other great stuff. So when I finished playing 4 years ago, I decided I needed to share information with as many people as possible. I moved back home to Denver, Colorado, and I started a high-performance junior program. But fortunately, I got a chance to work with adult players, and actually some of the most rewarding lessons I've ever given have been to adults, because they're usually coming to me wanting to learn something new. They're just very passionate, and I'm passionate about coaching too. So that's how all this kind of got started, and I just not only practiced the system that I developed on myself and honed it and refined it, but then the last 4 years coaching every day, you learn what works and you learn what doesn't work. And I've never really followed that traditional model of watch the ball, bend your knees. I always felt like there was an easier way, and that's what I've essentially done. I do that on the court every day in my lessons, and now with this first course, we're going to be sharing it with the world, so I'm really excited about that.
Can you go into what you mean by like your teaching method is not, like you said, it's not watch the ball, bend your knees. What is like what how would you describe your method?
Absolutely. So basically, when I watch a tennis match, much differently than your normal player or your normal coach. I'm looking, number one, for where's the ball landing in the court. I'm very aware of the targets where the ball is landing, also aware of how high the ball is going over the net on certain shots. And so a huge component of tennis is actually, it's target practice. It's going as an archer, basically shooting an arrow and seeing if you can hit the bullseye. The players that aim the best are the most accurate, or where they want to put the ball are those that play the best tennis, provided they have solid technique. So that's a huge foundation, and I find that junior players and rec players don't aim as well or aim as smart as professional players. We can all learn from the pros in that area. The second component I always look for is the technique, and there are certain elements of the body, mainly the hand and the arm, but I look at how the hand is working. And so a lot of coaches might talk about, turn your shoulders and rotate your hips. You'll never hear me say turn your shoulders or rotate your hips. I believe there are ways to move the body so that you don't even have to think about it. It happens naturally. So look at what the hand does and what the arm does, how relaxed the hand is. It's a more European way of teaching rather than as much analytical. It's more field-based. And then the last thing that I just touched on a little bit seconds ago is the movement or the footwork. And there's a specific way to move. And the thing that frustrates me with coaches, they always say, hey, move your feet, but they never teach you how to move your feet. So to move in the court, whether you're in the middle of the court, whether you're out wide, whether you're transitioning forward or moving backwards, and there's a real art to that. And it's really learning how how to dance, creating a rhythm. So I teach a specific series of footwork patterns to all my students, and from the most basic to the most advanced for a pro player. But it starts with creating that foundation. So targets, the right techniques with the hands, and then using your feet correctly. So that if I get 2 out of the 3 elements right, if I get the technique, with the hands and the targets right, the good ball is going to. If I get all 3 elements, including the footwork, there's a 95% chance to go in. So it's really easy once you kind of know what to look for, and that's what I'm hoping to do, is be able to share this with the world of really how to fix your own shots, knowing how to correct your own mistakes using this.
Okay. Well, look, let's hit on the first point where you're talking about aiming. Like, what's the difference between a junior and a professional when they're aiming? You were telling me that juniors aim differently. What's the difference?
Well, the biggest thing is, first of all, a lot of coaches are always going to tell a player to hit deep. I've even heard it with volleys. Hit your volley deep. But if you really study the pros, if you're hitting the ball big enough, and that's the disclaimer, you have to hit the ball big, obviously. But you can hit a lot of balls that land just past the service line. You can hit volleys that land just past the service line. You don't always have to hit deep in the corners. And I actually had a last week missing short ball putaways, and he couldn't figure it out, and his technique looked pretty good. And I asked him, where are you aiming? And he went and he put a ball down on the spot that he was aiming, and it was in the exact corner of where the single sideline and the baseline hit. I mean, he was literally trying to hit both lines, and I've seen that over and over again where people are aiming, about 6 inches to a foot from the sideline and about 6 inches to a foot from the baseline, and there's just no room for error. And Federer and Nadal and Djokovic, all these guys bring their margins way in, and you'll hear great coaches and great players always talk about playing through the middle of the court first and then working from the inside out. And that's where the junior players and the reg players miss. They're just playing too close to the lines, and they need to bring their margins in and be more solid first before they go for that winning shot.
Okay. Now, let me give you an example, and you can answer this. Like, let's say you're going to hit the ball down the line, all right, and I'm a rec player, and a lot of times I'll aim for the line. Sometimes I'll miss, sometimes I'll get it in. But if you're trying to hit it down the line, right down the line, where should a rec player aim?
I mean, even a pro player, a lot of times when I go down the line with my forehand and I'm ripping a forehand, that ball is 2 to 3 feet from the sideline, because I know that if I catch it a little bit late, instead of my mistake being an error, my mistake becomes a winner. And then I gain more confidence because my mistakes are great shots now. If you aim for the line and you catch a little bit late and you miss it wide, then you're beating yourself up and you're losing confidence in that shot. So there's much more importance on moving the ball 2 to 3 feet inside the single sideline and giving it a good ride. I mean, you want to rip this ball. It's not like you're just going to float it back. If you have the capability to do that, you want to give it a ride and have good racket head speed and go for that shot, but you don't want to aim for the line because there's just not enough room for error.
Okay. So you're saying 2 to 3 feet. And I guess to get a good idea, a lot of times, people that don't study this like, you did or do, you're being a pro player, 2 to 3 feet, we may not really realize how far that is, inside. So maybe a good thing to do if you're going to practice, I plan on going out there next time I hit the courts but maybe put a marker out that's, measure 3 foot out from the, the line, and put a marker out and aim for that shot so you'll have an idea when you're actually playing a match where you should be aiming.
Todd, that's a great point. And actually, I'm at the time of this interview, I'm with a pro player, former top 50 WTA pro player, and we were working out a couple days ago, and she was missing some balls wide. And I actually got 2 chairs off of the sideline, and I brought the chairs out so that they were, two of the legs were right on the sideline and the other two legs, obviously, a couple feet inside. And I put the other chair on the other sideline. So she had to hit the ball in between these two chairs. She didn't miss wide for the next 10 minutes because she had that visual prop there, knowing that, boy, if I hit outside that chair, that's not going to work for me. And so that's a great tip, that if you can put a line down or some cones down, something where instead of hitting a target, you're actually hitting it through a lane. You're hitting it through a road instead of trying to knock a cone over. And that's a different way of looking at things.
Okay. Yeah, that's an awesome tip. That's I guess when you aim for a bigger target like a lane as opposed to 6 inches from the line, your shots you have a better chance of getting them in. I know for personally, back during the league back this spring, I was just hitting too many shots out, so I just said I'm going to keep it in the middle of the court, and it helped a lot. But aiming for the sideline or down the line or whatever, and putting a lane out during practice, I've never done that, but it seems like it would be give you a good idea of what to expect in a match. One thing that you had mentioned a minute ago was about the footwork and movement and dancing around, and that's a little different than a normal coach that you'll hire at a local club or whatever. Can you tell me what you mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, what I touched on was that a lot of coaches will say, hey, move your feet. And I've actually had numerous students come to me and say, yeah, this coach just tells me to stay on my toes and move my feet. But the problem is, like dancing, if you want to learn a specific dance like ballet or cha-cha-cha or ballroom dancing, there are specific dance moves. And when you watch the pros, they are moving in a specific way. Now the question is, are they being taught those specific moves, or are they doing it naturally? I think it's a combination of both. I think that when you look at the Spanish style, I think they move in a similar way. The French move in a similar way. But there's a real science, a real art to moving correctly. And so what I touch on in my course is I actually have 6 footwork patterns that I go through in this course, because I didn't want to give 25 and overwhelm everyone. I wanted everyone to have the foundation first. So I went through 6 footwork patterns that you can actually practice that will help you with your balance. I mean, that's really the key is, are you hitting on balance are you playing with balance when you play tennis? And a lot of people think, well, they need to get set for every shot, but it's really important to have great balance, whether you're set for the shot or whether you're moving dynamically through the shot. So like I said, there's a real specific way to move it, and I teach people that when I give my lessons, and you're going to see some of that in the course coming up.
Okay, yeah. When I went through the course, one of the things that impressed me the most or that I liked the most, because I like to play, practice ball. I don't like to have to depend on anybody, but you have those ball machine drills, and I noticed that you were, when you're doing the drills, you're moving up and back and through the ball, and your feet never stopped. And you had a specific, footwork pattern set for each drill, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually in the deluxe upgrade portion of the course. So if anybody decides to invest in the tennis forehand solution, they'll have that option to check that portion out. And I put that in there because a lot of people, I even see them at the public tennis courts, they get that ball machine out and they just kind of hit ground strokes, just kind of standing there. And I decided to take it to another level and give people a purpose. They could actually practice these footwork patterns, set up the ball machine in a way where they could move through the ball correctly. And I actually learned a lot of this from Peter Fleming, who played doubles with John McEnroe. So anybody listening to this call that followed tennis back in the 80s, Peter Fleming was the other half of the John McEnroe dynamic duo on the doubles court. And I went to London to visit him one time, and I was just too stuck with my feet. I wasn't moving enough. And he showed me that he and McEnroe, an hour a day, would move through every shot that they hit. So you learn how to hit the ball while you're moving but having great balance. And I touch on that with one specific footwork pattern that I call the run-through, and that really helps people transition up from the baseline to the net A lot of coaches are going to teach you to run up, slow down, get set, hit, and then run up again to the net. That's an inefficient way to play tennis. You want to move through it. You want to glide through it. You want to be graceful. And that's one of the things that if you practice these elements with the footwork that I'm teaching people, you actually become more graceful and tennis becomes easier. And that's the whole point of it, to have tennis be easier and more fun for people to go out and play it well.
I hear you, man. That was one of the things that I like, just like a light bulb went off when I was watching the drills or whatever. It seems like a lot of people, myself included, and that's mainly why I had the light bulb moment go off, I guess. You know, they miss a lot of shots when they have no, like, if a ball is just out of their reach and they have to run through. There's no running up to it and stopping. It's just the timing where you have to run through it, and a lot of people miss that. And if you're able to practice that type of stuff, then it's going to become second nature during a match. And
yeah,
so
it's really interesting because even at the highest level, I see pros reaching for balls where I know that if they just move through it and actually let their body weight keep going after they hit the ball, their body would stay upright and completely balanced. And, even if you see Federer, sometimes he will load up on a forehand, like an inside-out forehand. He'll push off that front leg and jump, but he's not jumping straight in the air. He's actually jumping to the side to get away from the ball as he's hitting it, and he actually lands out in the alley sometimes if he's hitting an inside-out forehand. So there's a real premium, again, on moving through the shot or moving away from the ball as you're hitting it so that you can stay balanced.
Cool. Well, look, speaking of inside-out forehands and all that stuff, you said that there are times that are best to use it, or actually open stance, closed stance is what we were discussing. You said that there are times when you should use it, times when you shouldn't use it. Any insight to that? I mean, that's something kind of brand new to me. I mean, not the actual stance, but I didn't know there were times to use it and times not to use it.
Yeah, I mean, the standard issue is that if the ball is coming down the middle of the court and you're not advancing to the net, you're going to want to get on your front foot as much as possible because I believe stepping into the ball makes you more aggressive. I see a lot of players when they get nervous, they hit a lot of balls off their back foot. One of the things when I was playing on the tour, if I felt like I was getting complacent or conservative and not hitting the ball well, I just put a premium on getting on my front foot as much as possible, which is a more old school way of playing tennis because you see a lot of pros now hitting open stance because I actually have rec players come to me and say, my coach wants me to do all open stance now because of what they're seeing on TV. But that's not really what's going on. You'll see Nadal step into forehands. You'll see Federer, Djokovic. They get on their front foot. They get their weight going forward, and I believe you can hit a bigger ball when you do that. With that being said, if you get moved out wide, it's an obvious to open up your stance and hit off of your outside leg, hit an open stance forehand. But again, I've heard other coaches say you want to step in on every ball, and even when you run out to a wide ball, you want to step in and get on your front foot if you can. So I see both extremes, and I think both extremes are too extreme. I'm a situational coach, so I look for on this shot you do this, and on that shot you do that. And if you start to kind of learn the methods, then it makes it easier because when you move out wide, typically you're open stance, and when you're in the middle, you're going to step in. And then even when you're running up to a ball, and one of the footwork patterns in the tennis forehand solution is the run-through, you're going to hit it off of your outside leg as you're moving through the ball. And a lot of players actually get on their front foot, and they kind of stumble over their feet when they're transitioning up towards the net.
Okay, that makes sense. So if you had to break it down into, because you said you were a situational coach, if you had to break it down to make it just very simple in 1, 2, 3 steps, step one would be, and I'll let you finish, but just to kind of give you an example of what I mean, is when the ball's out wide, way out wide, then typically it's better to hit an open stance. Now, if it's right down the middle, you want to hit closed stance. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly right. I mean, if you can remember that one point, I mean, I have people, again, the ball comes down the middle and they don't get on their front foot. They just wait for the ball and they hit it off their back foot or they hit it open stance. And it's kind of, for lack of a better word, it's kind of lazy. It's kind of like, okay, get on your front foot because you're going to drive that ball. You're going to hit it really well. And that's what you do. And then when the ball's out wide, you just open up your stance. So that's the easiest way to remember that. And it can really help your game when you have that understanding.
Okay. All right. Cool. Well, look. What about the? Now I've read this in magazines. I know that you teach it, but when you tell people to spread their fingers out on their grip, what does that do, and why should people do that?
Sure. I alluded to that back on the launch videos that I did, video 2, where I gave the 3 sneaky secrets, and one of them was this sneaky grip trick. And I know you said you mentioned it or you saw it in a tennis magazine before, and I think I've maybe seen it somewhere out there. But again, it surprises me how many players show up on my court and they don't hold the racket correctly. So somewhere it's lost in translation. You would think everybody would hold the racket correctly if they're taught from a very young age, or even as a rec player. If you're starting tennis as an adult, if you have a good coaching, the very first lesson should be, right, spread the finger, how you hold the racket. And what that does is it gives you more feel in the hand. If your hand is scrunched together when you hold the racket, you're going to have more tension. You're not going to have that feel in the hand. And I believe a lot of tennis is played in the hand. It's a feel-based sport, and it's more artistic rather than analytical. And so if you can spread that index finger out and angle the hand on the racket a little bit more, you're going to get that feel of being able to brush up the back of the ball, even be able to drive through the ball. You're just more versatile, and you can relax more and create that effortless power that you're looking for.
Okay, and it's just the index finger, or is it both the index and the middle finger, or all of them, or what do you recommend?
Yeah, I think all of it. It depends on the player, because again, I've had some players come to me and they're actually too spread out, maybe after I show it to them. So it depends on the player, but generally most people are too scrunched together with the index finger and the middle finger. So you want to spread that index finger and kind of try to angle the hand on the racket rather than have it kind of be a square, a block. A little bit difficult to explain on a phone call, but hopefully some of you out there will get the gist. But saying that, even the other fingers sometimes I see are too locked together for certain players. But I would start with the index finger, spreading it a bit, and just making sure it's relaxed on that grip, and you're not holding the death grip when you're swinging the racket, because it's rare that I find a player barely holding the racket and having no tension at all. Usually people are squeezing too tight. That's going to limit your energy and your power that you can give to the ball effortlessly.
Okay. Another, I believe that's a good point to spreading your fingers out is that it creates leverage for more stability. When your hands are, scrunched up like you're talking about, you have less leverage, and you have a longer arm as far as the mechanics go, where the racket isn't so wobbly in your hand.
No, I totally agree with you. You hit the nail on the head there. So yeah, you're totally right.
All right. Well, look, another thing, I want to go back to the aiming thing real quick, because this is a question that I've had, and I look at you watch tennis pros and all that. How high do they? I know it's always situational, depending on what you're trying to do, but in general, like how high do you aim over the net? I mean, I know it's going to depend on the spin and all that stuff, but if you could give if you could always tell someone to aim a certain height over the net, what would you say?
Yeah, again, situational. We talked about the footwork, doing different things depending on the ball. It's the same thing with the height over the net. If you look at Nadal hitting a forehand or a backhand, if he's 6 feet behind the baseline, that ground stroke is probably going to clear the net by 4 to 6 feet. But as soon as he steps into that court, he's going to flatten out that ball, and it's going to go about 6 inches to a foot over the net. A lot of junior tennis coaches are going to teach what Robert Lansdorp, the famous coach who coached 5 number 1 players in the world, and I had the good fortune of taking a few private lessons with Robert out in Los Angeles. he's a big believer in driving the ball and hitting the ball low over the net. And he calls that high ball, the ball that goes 6 feet over the net or maybe even higher, he calls it an academy ball. He kind of gives a hard time to tennis academies. But what happens is, especially with junior players, is they always practice hitting 6 feet over the net, and they never learn how to drive the ball like Agassi and even Nadal and Federer can do when they're inside the court. So it's really dependent on your positioning in the court. The deeper you are, the further back on the baseline, you got to send that ball up over the net, 4 to 6 feet minimum. But as soon as you get into the court, if you're able to create natural power, that ball should go real low over the net. It should drive through the court. It should hurt your opponent. So, again, the rule of thumb is really dependent on your positioning in the court.
Okay. Well, most club players are going to be, it's probably not going to be very often where they're 6 feet behind the baseline. And a lot of times it seems like when they miss shots, it's going into the net. So it's sort of, I guess the question I'm asking is sort of like when what we were talking about earlier about the lanes next, going down the line. Is there some sort of a lane that because if you're aiming 6 inches over the net, I know for me when I do that, I hit a lot of balls in the net because I'm not as good as you are. But so I guess the question would be, is there like a general guideline for, a lane over the net that would be helpful for somebody?
I usually talk about hitting through windows over the net. You want to visualize hitting over a window, but interestingly enough, you mentioned the thing about you hitting to the net when you miss, and certainly that can be true at the lower altitudes. I'm up in the Rocky Mountain High of Denver, Colorado, so our ball's flying up there a lot more. But normally what I see actually is that if somebody mishits the ball or doesn't hit it clean, it generally goes in the net. But if they get some good wood on it or hit it real clean, I see people having the ball fly on them and go long. So typically, I'm having people aim lower if their ball is flying on them, hit it lower over the net and hit a laser rather than slowing the pace down and hitting it higher. But if people are hitting it in the middle of the net, then they're probably not hitting the ball clean enough. Again, that probably is going to happen more at the altitude where the ball is flying more. But I've even seen it at low altitudes where if someone hits too high over the net and they're trying to drive the ball, it's going to fly on them. So obviously they'd have to have some more rotation, more topspin on that forehand if they want the ball to drop in. Okay.
So the answer lies within the altitude more or less. And it
lies in the altitude. It lies in the altitude, but also I would be interested to, take a look at your game top, and if you're hitting in the net a lot, are you really hitting the ball clean into the net? Next time you go out and you hit the ball in the net, ask yourself that question: did I hit that ball clean? Because if you hit it clean as a whistle and it goes in the net, it's probably going to smack the tape, which I don't really think is necessarily a bad miss. If you're missing in the middle of the net, then you're probably not hitting a clean shot. You're probably kind of mishitting a little bit. It's kind of floating into the net.
Okay. Yeah, I just know I've taken time off, like 2 months for the summer because it's been 115 degrees around here. So, and I played for the first time the other day, and back during the spring, I made it a purpose, or my intent was to aim. Every shot I would aim 3 feet over the net because when I try to drive it, I have so much spin that it would drop before it got to the net. So, but then, so back in the spring, I didn't miss, I felt good about how I played. But, coming back from a 2-month layoff, I was hitting a lot of balls in the net the other night. And I don't know if it was because, of my thinking of trying to hit it, 6 inches over the net, if I got back to that way of thinking. But anyway,
I agree. I would definitely, if in that case, I would really focus on, hitting the ball higher over the net. It sounds simple, but like you said, sometimes people can forget about that.
Yeah. All right. Well, man, I appreciate you going over all this stuff with us. What all do you have in your forehand program? If you could just explain a little bit about what people are going to get when they buy.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Tennis Forehand Solution is my first digital online training course. So the idea is for people to be able to learn online, learn how to play better tennis, and to have access to that even on their iPhone or their iPod. They can take it on the court with them and check out some cool videos that will help them get better. And what I did is I broke it down into several components. First off, there's actually a PowerPoint presentation that I did, an audio presentation with a PowerPoint, where I just go through my tennis system. So, all strokes really, but really the concepts of the system. And then I break it down into three main components: the targets, which we touched on already, the technique, which we touched on already a little bit with the grip, but there's also the grip, the start, and the finish. That's what falls underneath the technique. And you'll notice I didn't mention contact points. You'll never hear me tell someone hit the ball more in front. You'll never hear me say, make good contact with the ball. I only focus on the grip, the start, and the finish, and also the targets. And when that happens, usually the contact point cleans up. And then the last component is the footwork, which we've talked a lot about as well. So if you get your targets right, if you get your technique components right that are in the program, and you get the footwork right, you're setting up a foundation for your forehand that can be incredible. But I haven't stopped there. I went with some bonuses. I put in a ton of bonuses. I think I got 7 or 8 in there. I've got a quick start checklist. I've got a success log. I've got a couple of audios, one from a high-level coach that helped me with his forehand, helped me with my forehand, and is directly responsible for helping me break the top 100 for the first time at the age of 30. So I really tried to bring in a ton of videos, a ton of PowerPoints, some audios, some PDF manuals, really a well-rounded blend so people could learn the different facets of the fundamentals of the forehand. I didn't bring out any fancy tricks for necessarily the pro player, but when I say that, I see a lot of pros that have suspect forehands not doing the things that I'm teaching in this program. So that's why I like it so much, because if you're a beginning player or if you're a professional, it doesn't matter. It falls into whatever range you're at. You can take a tip from this program and make your forehand better. I mean, I guarantee it, because it's not like something I just pulled out of a book. It's something that I've lived, and I teach it every single day, and I see the results with people on the court. So, again, I had to share it with the world because it was just working so well on the court.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the most comprehensive programs I've seen, and I appreciate you letting me take a look at it and all that stuff. I mean, I'm going to put some of that stuff to use as soon as it starts cooling off around here. But yeah, I mean, if you want to learn more, like all the details and everything that's in the program, just click on the link right below the audio button that you're listening to, and it'll show you everything that Jeff's got for you. Jeff, I appreciate it again. I appreciate you taking the time to give us some tips, and I guess we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Todd, and we will talk soon. Thank you.